Thank you for joining Minority Alliance Organization meeting today. Today we will be discussing Black ancestry and also speaking a little bit on the presidential debate recap from last night. Um, Starting basically, I had Mark contact me this week, speaking on a couple of topics that we may need to speak on through the organization. And one that piqued my interest was our ancestry and where we actually come from, and how that has basically affected, the outcome of how our communities are today, based on a lot of people not knowing their true heritage and things of that nature. Uh, while doing my research basically on our ancestry and things of that nature, I was looking at the irony in school when we actually learn about, our heritage and where we come from. All we are taught is as slaves, the Black African American came from Africa, and then we were slaves, and then we were free, and then we jumped right into the civil rights era. And that's normally how it's taught, and that's normally how most Black Americans remember their history. So, um, furthermore than the ancestry, I'm going to let Mark talk a little deeper on that end. But I was interested within that gap period of our ancestry, and in between, being freed from slavery and the civil rights movement, because that was a good, 40, 30 years there, that are untalked about, or we aren't taught within school about what was going on, with the African American during these time periods as much. And I came across in 1919 uh, the I came across the Universal Negro Improvement Association and got to looking a little bit deeper into that. And Marcus Garvey speaking on our ancestry and being able to go back to Africa and build a economic structure for ourselves there. And I mean, to me, what stood out was, I know with our organization, the way we are geared is a lot of the ideology shared by Marcus Garvey, I believe, is intertwined with our goals and what we are trying to do. I mean, he at that time period was speaking on um, us taking pride within ourselves, taking pride within our ancestry, within being African Americans, and where we come from, our lineage, and things of that nature. And basically, he was saying, to know yourself, you have to know all these things, um, uh, basically towards your ancestry and where you come from, things of that sort. So on that note, I'm going to let Mark talk a little bit about the ancestry and the way that knowing your lineage could make a difference, and the way you act can make a difference in the way we move forward as a culture here as African Americans.
Right. So first thing I want to do is I want to set a little bit of background. One of the major, kind of mental hurdles that we, try to fight with our organization and some of the things that we talk about is in being able to kind of understand, our place and, and not just in this society, but, where we stand as a people, where we are, not just as individuals, but collectively, where do we stand here in this nation that we live in, attempting to live our lives, attempting to raise our children, attempting to, have some of the things that are birthrights for others and seem to not be for us. So one of the biggest issues that we have is culturalistically being able to kind of, have that type of unity, have that type of, community shared action, towards the things that we know are right and that others know are wrong with the current system and are invested in keeping that way. One of the biggest issues that we have as a community is that lack of togetherness, that, going from the crab in a barrel mentality of the crab, any individual crab could easily climb out of the barrel, but he'll never be able to do so because the other crabs pull him down. and they, you know, kind of all die in the same barrel because none of them allow each other to climb out of that barrel. So in August, my wife and I, you know, we celebrated our 14th wedding anniversary, and I kind of wanted to go outside the box, and I got her an Ancestry DNA kit for our anniversary. Kind of seemed like an odd kind of gift, but I thought it would be something that would be kind of like a cool adventure. You know, she would kind of find out like a little bit more about herself, you know, what kind of where she's from, and then, you know, who knows, maybe a year from now at our next anniversary, maybe we'll go there and check it out. You know, I didn't really think too deeply about where that would go. Now, you know, she's mixed, and she was, you know, kind of raised her entire life under the, you know, under the umbrella of being Black and Mexican, just, you know, under the blanket term Blexican. And really no other thought kind of went into it. And that kind of built a bit of a racial ambivalence, you know, for her, where, you know, it's kind of like a not accepted by either, not truly in both, you know, kind of, you know, I'm just me kind of, you know, living scenario for, you know, for itself. Well, we got the results back a little less than a week ago, and they were startling to say the least. They were, you know, very eye-opening. They were, you know, it was something that no one expected. Now, as opposed to just simply being Black, it actually drew specific lineage back to Nigeria specifically. And it drew specific lineage to Indigenous American, you know, in the Southwestern region specifically. And there was also some other things in there. There's a little bit of, you know, European and a little bit of more coastal things, but the two dominant genes, and the most dominant being Nigerian. And that changed things. That changed things quite a bit because, you know, now it gave a specific identity. It gave a specific, you know, kind of a cultural line that you could draw back to a specific people in a specific era, you know, in a very specific way. So it kind of opened not just her eyes, but my eyes to looking into more of, you know, kind of where those things are and where those things come from. You realize that you're not just under the blanket umbrella of being Black or being Mexican or something like that. There's more specifics out there. And, you know, we spoke specifically even on our last call about the difference between other cultures and ours, being that ours was, you know, one of, if not the only one, where the entire culture was ripped away and stolen and destroyed, you know, through the act of the slave trade and what it took to kind of make viable slaves for the South to get this country rich. And, you know, that was kind of the thing. And going back to what you said, as far as, you know, the slaves were ripped away, the slaves worked the plantations, there was the Civil War, fast forward to the Civil Rights Movement, and then it's modern, you know, African-American history, and that's just it. But being able to physically see it and being able to actually look at it and see that when you look at either way that you looked, that there is a specific culture that you can actually physically see of, this is where I come from, this is actually home, this is what was actually going on there. They didn't have, you see the absence of some of the angst that we deal with in our own communities here in America, and some of the things that we deal with as far as how things are stereotyped, how things are thought of, how people are looked at, the way we view different things like skin tone, weight, education level, and all those different things, and how little that existed as you really delved into, you know, the culture from those areas. And it really opened, you know, kind of this identity. It really put a real identity to the individual, and it took away kind of the blanket, you know, kind of everybody's in it for themselves, kind of scramble to make your way kind of mentality that has driven this country for so long. That, you know, you understand that almost that the shackles that we had that were iron and chain were replaced by the shackles of society and expectation. and that you don't necessarily have to be a part of that, because there's a legitimate community that you do belong to, and that that you actually have that sort of lineage, and you can trace it back, and you can actually see the good with the bad. You can kind of see and trace as much of that family history as you can, see some things, and you'll learn so much. Like I learned a lot just kind of studying along her side with the Nigerian culture, and just kind of seeing all these different things, reading all these different things, watching different things. We saw a lot of culturalistic things. We saw ceremonies and weddings, and we saw tours of different areas and towns, and watching, and it struck me at that moment that I had never in my life actually watched anything like that, where you saw an entire community or an entire culture that was built from the ground up, and it's 100% her people. It is 100% African. It is 100% Black. It was 100% those people, and they didn't have a lot of those same issues that we had. And it kind of opened the eyes to the point where you can seriously look around and say, if I could tackle every single person, every single minority, and have them take a DNA test to see what they really are, where they really come from, and all those little things, and have all that information in their laps, I would definitely do it. And I would recommend that everyone took these tests. I mean, I'm going to take mine very soon, because you would be amazed at being able to actually get a hold of that lineage. A lot of the culturalistic issues that we face, that so many other minorities do not have to face, because they brought their culture with them, we can actually get that back. And that helps us even here in this country with this culture, because it having that united sense of purpose, that united sense of self, it builds a community self-esteem, it builds the individual self-esteem, and it gives us more of a pride. And I think that for the drive that that we saw with Marcus Garvey and what he was trying to do, even what people like Akon are trying to do now, they're trying to do it over there, and that's a fantastic thing. But here, where we are right now, those sort of things can also be built by having that sense of community, that sense of self, that sense of reinvestment in ourselves, and actually betting on ourselves to be able to do better, and to be able to do more, and be able to do with each other, and to be able to take each other by the hand, lift each other up, not tear each other down, and move forward. And one of the great stumbling blocks to that is being a part of this blanket umbrella culture. And we don't, having taken this test and having seen some of the things that we've seen, and discovered some of the discoveries that are there, you don't have to do that. You don't have to be a part of that system. You don't have to be a part of those, under that umbrella. You can actually break free from that umbrella and realize that there is a greater community that we can build ourselves, if we just, are able to identify properly.
Yes, sir. And I would say I was actually riding with one of my Lyft drivers this week, and even more so, um, what clicked when you actually start speaking on Ancestry. Me and him were having a conversation, very similar on the same stance, and I personally asked him, what does he think one of the main issues within the minority community, and why we have the crab and the barrel effect, and he spoke on he called it, his version of it was the tribe effect. And he said what it became was when you had a ton of different tribes come over to America and become slaves, they intertwined. And these are tribes that normally wouldn't, you had tribes that were enemies. You had tribes who were alliances. You had tribes who that would never mingle with these other tribes, other than slavery gave them reason now, and gave everybody the same fight. Basically, we were all in the same situation, in the same boat. And that's where a lot of our ancestry is actually tied into. But basically, by him saying the tribe effect, he said, a lot of the crab in the barrel effect that we experienced in 2020, is all tied into that generational ties going back to our tribes and not knowing ourselves and not knowing, you know, basically we were all thrown together at one point, and it created a chaotic how do you say, a chaotic race of people, because you don't, when you don't know your heritage, just a lot of things tied into that, and a lot of other cultures within America and things of that nature, they can tell you their family history, you know, back to, you know, normally where they come from originally. And that's something I believe is Black Americans, as you said, you know, we've got to do a little bit more research and diving into. And you know, when you said you'll tackle every minority and have them go take an ancestry test if you could, you know, I think that's another movement that we should actually look at beginning, even if it's through the organization or just through social media, period, and the push of having a way that more people, it being more convenient, because I know currently it is slightly expensive for people to actually go do the ancestry test. I'm not sure how much the bundle is. Do you know there, Mark?
The
Through
one,
ancestry.com.
yeah, the one that I purchased specifically was $119. Now they do have some of the some of the things that are like basic little, family finders and things like that that even start off as free. Now you don't get a whole lot of information from those, but it is a start for those, for some people who may not have that money, just laying around for a test. So, we definitely understand that. And for those who can, I would say it's definitely worth it to do and to build that ancestry and to build that tree up. And it's helpful because, again, not only did my wife learn about herself, but obviously it changes the dynamic for our children and even our grandchildren. Like, it changes the complete dynamic for everyone around us. I mean, she was able to even inform her mother of information that her mother had thought was different her entire life. And that's over 60 years of, basically living a lie that, now are, privy to. So, it does different things, but the one that I had gotten was $119, and I would say it was definitely money well spent. And there are different options. There's many different types and many different companies. I would say do your research, check it out. The one that we got is working well for us, but I would say definitely look into it and see what works best for you.
Well, on that, we'll at least post a link following our meeting today towards ancestry.com, and at least notify people that is something that we need to actually start pushing, making a push for people to actually learn their lineage and do a little bit of research on where their people actually originated. Um, and being able to dive from that point on into our next segment of today's meeting, speaking on the debate last night. Personally, I'm going to start off, asking you your take on how you think it overall went, Mark, and what were some of the biggest takeaways from each candidate that you saw on that end.
So the hardest part of my take on this is actually answering the question of what is my take without me rolling my eyes or laughing. That was a grease fire inside of a dumpster fire inside of a house fire. It was a mess. Granted, it was a mess by design, but it was a mess. That was meant to really murky and muddy the waters, and that is exactly what it accomplished. But at the same time, it's kind of like I said before, where I truly believe that 9 out of 10 people are not undecided. They are decided. The question is, for some of those quote unquote undecided voters, it's being able to square away and justify the decision that you already have in your head. And they would allow or use things like these debates and things that they hear in these debates to kind of allow that justification to be certified. Basically, for as far as information is concerned, we didn't learn anything. There was nothing there that we were going to learn. Obviously, there were a few nuggets of ideas and a few nuggets of plans sprinkled in amongst general evasion that you get from politicians, and the machinations that they tend to do, the needle jabs and things like that. The one thing that I would definitely take from the situation is that we are in a situation now between what minorities are going through in the streets and what we're dealing with when it comes to the relationship and the ever deteriorating relationship between law enforcement and minority communities. What we're dealing with the economy and the number of people who are out of work right now, the number of people who have lost businesses, the number of people who have been furloughed from jobs and that job is never coming back, the number of people who are hurting, and the number of people who've lost family members, and that number rises every single day. I wouldn't say that you got anything perfect out of both candidates, but at least one spoke on it. At least one had a plan for it. The bottom line is that we're supposed to, as reasonable adults, be able to look through the antics and the bluster to find what the idea is and what the plan is. But if all there is yelling and bluster or whatever, then there is nothing there. Then that means there's nothing behind it, and that the sizzle is supposed to be the sizzle, and you're supposed to ignore the fact that there's no steak. And I would hope at this point, after having watched this for 3.5 years on this stage, that most people are beyond that. Obviously, that may or may not be the case, but the bottom line is we have to ask ourselves, if you are comfortable enough in what you see, what you've seen, what you go through right now, what you've gone through, to sign up for 4 more years of that and just kind of hope for the best, kind of hope that things kind of stay inside of some form of bubble, even if you completely ignore what the last 3.5 years have been like for so many people. Could it get better under someone else? I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know. I can't say for certain, but I can say for certain what's been going on, and I can say for certain that it's still not heading in the right direction. I can still say for certain that all of our norms as a democracy are continuing to erode like a sandcastle on a beach. And I don't know what it feels like, what it would have felt like for a citizen of Rome or of ancient Greece as their society began to collapse, but I imagine it felt a little like this. And we need to recognize that. And the idea of all the rhetoric and all the bluster and all the craziness and all the antics was to make sure that there was some form of equivalency to where, oh, there's no difference, they're all the same. Yeah, it really isn't. One has recourses, and one has a decorum that allows for you to deal with it if you're not getting what you need from it. If it's not providing for you, there are avenues to deal with it. The other is eroding any chance that you can deal with that issue if it is not addressed, that you can deal with a person if they're not upholding what they're in their office to do, and even your ability to fire them through your votes if they're not giving you what you need. So I think for people to understand that it's not just that, like I said, I know we're talking about picking between two evils. I wish there was a viable third candidate as well. There isn't. I wish that there were a better alternative, and that we had a different voice, and that there was a different thing to be able to put together. There isn't. So given what we have right now, given what is in front of us right now, there is no mass here. And that was basically my take after watching that.
Yes, sir. And I mean, personally, I'm gonna speak on a couple things that I think both candidates did pretty good, and things that my takeaways from each one, and things that I feel that they did bad. And I mean, starting with Trump, I mean, you know, him taking a shot at Biden's IQ and speaking on his education, I mean, has nothing to do with anything that the American people, want to know currently. And I mean, Trump, when it comes to his belief of the scientists on handling the COVID situation, I mean, to the common American's knowledge, it hasn't been, that well. And that same breath, I mean, when we got to the COVID discussion during the debate, where Biden said he would have handled it differently or better, I mean, that's still less truly as Americans look at it. I mean, how fast we have, I mean, yet we still have a long way to go with the recovery from COVID. But I mean, looking at it in the time basis on what was predicted in the beginning and how far along we've came, and at some extent, we have to be honest with ourselves and say, it has progressed quickly. I mean, as I said, we built a society of the microwave effect, on where we feel like we want microwave gratification. And we thought with even a virus such as COVID that we were going to get microwave gratification and it was going to be over quick. And one thing I will say against Trump in that aspect, for him to knowingly know that COVID was worse than what it was and still not give the total truth and total uh, situation to the American people in the timely fashion, that is an issue. But his excuse on not wanting to create a panic, people can take it however they want to take it on that end. Now, his appointing of Amy Comey there, and him and Joe Biden both speaking on her there, and you know Trump is basically saying, to the victor goes the spoils. With as far as our history goes, I mean, that is the American history, sad as it is. But I don't think that the Amy Comey seating situation in a presidential candidate in the presidential debate was an issue that we should be talking about. That should be an issue that we should be talking about when it comes to the Senate uh, appointing and the discussion within the Senate, not a debate, because it's neither. Biden can't do anything to stop Trump's appointing of Amy Comey. And let's go ahead and come to that realization. So for us to be speaking on it, that's nothing to push our needle further in the discussions that we were trying to make. Uh, when it came to Trump not wanting to, basically with the white supremacists and not directly speaking towards them and disagreeing with them, you know, however people want to take it, as I said, that should be a red flag in a sense. If you can't, if you're looking at one side of the race issue and you're calling people who are out protesting, they're all rioters in your mind. But when you look at white supremacists, you can't say that it's evil on that side. Bad is bad and good is good, no matter which side it is on. Period. So for him to not acknowledge that in the correct fashion was a little bit of an issue for me coming from Trump. Uh, when it comes down to his scientific belief, sadly enough, on the economy, or when you say he's listening to people who know how the economy works, I would say we would again have to take our hats off to the way that he's handled the economy under his presidency. It just is what it is. I mean, the economy has been doing better. I mean, yes, he was handed, you know, a perfect situation, but even handed a perfect situation, somebody could have let it slip or fall. And his trade deals within China and other countries have been trade deals that should have been made years ago, uh, where America was being taken advantage of. So I would say on Trump's end, that was my big takeaways. Uh, Good or bad, that's what we have in a candidate, and now you know. So his takes on race, don't necessarily line up with the things that we're trying to do. And flipping over to Biden on that same topic of race, uh, one thing Biden said that really caught my ear was he would have had a lot of the leaders within law enforcement and a lot of leaders within the civil rights um, activists and things of that nature all come together and have a meeting on talking about how we can overcome these situations that we are currently dealing with. Now, for me, that's a great first step and moving forward in the things that we're trying to accomplish. So we know in him that may be a possibility and something that we can get. As all presidents, they sit up on the stage and tell you one thing and may do something totally different. Until he's in office, we may never know. Um, when he spoke on the area of, healthcare, um, especially geared towards, as I said, the minority community, healthcare is something that within the minority community has never been a huge topic within our homes, a huge topic of how serious and how severe it is to have great health care. And now going through the COVID crisis, I hope it is waking a lot of people up on how important it is to have these things and things of that nature. So Biden's take on, continuing Obamacare from where it was, I don't necessarily agree with personally myself. I believe if we are going to build a healthcare system that works in America, we have to make one that works for everybody from the top to the bottom and not just the poor or just the rich. I mean, that's just my take on that idea
Mm-hmm.
there. And moving into him talking about climate change and things of that nature, um, this is the part where he not only lost me, but I believe he lost a lot of people who are more so Bernie and AOC supporters. Was he does not back the Green Deal and the Green New Deal. And the Green New Deal personally is an initiative that I believe in. And I believe if we're going to talk about climate change and start giving a little bit more effort within um, at the government level at attacking climate change, then the Green New Deal is a plan that I would follow personally. So I believe he lost. Me and you had a conversation a while back when we were first talking about Biden and Trump there, and I said, Biden's not going to lose certain supporters until he opens his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the debate has given Trump that foothold into assisting Biden on losing support from, as you said, still the not necessarily undecided voters, but I would say the far left Bernie supporters and things of that nature. And hopefully Bernie can um, will him back in when he gets on the campaign trail here in a few days and let them really understand what's at stake, during this voting process and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
But Biden is either going to, he, one thing that I believe that he needs to do within these debates and within being in front of the American public is he has to go ahead and choose which direction he believes he's going to go in with a lot of these things. Don't let sometimes be to the left, sometimes be in the middle, sometimes be lukewarm in between both. You got to choose which direction you're going to go because people, and this is why you have so many Trump supporters who are huge on Trump, because Trump decides he's going to go straight, he's going to go straight. And that direction isn't going to change. And that's why he does have the support that he has. But Biden can't continue to put on, you know, the left shoe and not know if he's going to go left, or in that sense, he has to choose what type of Democratic president he wants to be and allow the American people to decide, if that's the president that they want going forward and not, as they say, be wish-washy or be flip-flop with his decisions on a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when it comes to him speaking on, packing the court and things of that nature, he he I believe lost a couple more people at that point because he couldn't give a clear answer with if he would pack the court or not, or if that's something that he would actually look into. He was talking around the issue, and I mean that's something that us as American people do we really want uh, a Supreme Court with more than 9 justices when we already have a Senate with as many people as in the Senate, and it's hard to get anything passed in the Senate. So imagine how issues heading into the Supreme Court with the packed court would actually be handled. uh, it would be years before things are actually adjudicated within the judicial system. And we have to look at all these issues as, is that something that we want? Is that a direction that we have to go in? And if Biden is going to be the candidate for you, then you know I would want a clear answer. And if you're looking at packing the court or not, because that not only changes the American structure, that changes a ton of things going forward, period. And
Yeah.
so uh, my last take was, as you said, it is a pick between, as you said, pick between both evils again. It's sad it has to be this way, as it was in the race in 2016. But this is even more the need the next time around to have a liable third candidate to choose from, because I believe what, as I said, another thing in Trump's favor is there not being a third candidate. That actually goes in Trump's favor, whether people believe it or not, because as I said, Biden he wants to play the middle and he wants to play the left also. And as we know, you can't play both sides. You have to, as I said, choose, what type of candidate you want to be going forward. Um, my biggest issue with the moderating of the debate was Chris Wallace is a known Democrat. He's you can't have my personal take is, you can't have a moderator that has a prejudice towards one side or another side at the end of the day. And I believe we need somebody who's more neutral in that sense to moderate, even if it's not within this election and these debates, but going forward, we do need a more neutral moderator, because it does seem at times that he's attacking based off of his personal feelings more so than off of what the American people actually care about and want to hear. And those should be the issues that we should be actually directing towards in this debate, and not anyone's personal take or personal feelings on one candidate or another.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, I do you one better. I think that debates at this point don't need a moderator at all. I think what needs to happen is a question needs to be posed. You can have a host, whatever, but the question needs to be posed. And instead of putting these two guys, I mean, it's 2020, and we got pandemic rules. You have someone pose a question. You got two guys. Like I said, I posted this on Facebook. Treat it like that show Around the Horn. Put them on a split screen. You have go ahead and put a 2-minute timer up there when you pose a question to a candidate, and while that person's talking, the other person's muted, period. When it's not your turn to talk, you're not talking. You go ahead and give someone 2 minutes, give the other person 2 minutes, and then give each one of them a 1-minute rebuttal, and then we move on, period. Give them, if they can't get their thought out in that amount of time, then they have not got their thought together. It takes all those things away, and it gives people an absolute, kind of clear-cut, understood way of those candidates being able to get their ideas across to the people, instead of trying to defend against this attack or defend against that attack. And it takes the particular personal prejudice of any particular moderator out of the game. One of the things that we've seen in the last few elections is that, everybody is just as intrigued over who the moderator is going to be as to, who the candidates are. And that's ridiculous. That's adding a layer of anxiety to a situation that already has too much. To kind of go back, through a couple of things, with that is that, I do believe that, Biden did a terrible job of making sure that people understood that the things that he backs, and that the things that he didn't back, he had an alternative plan for. He mentioned a couple of things in passing that should not have been mentioned in passing, that should have been features. Did he support the Green New Deal? No, but right behind that, mixed in with some of the other crap that was going on, he talked about some of the things that they're doing, that they want to do as far as converting some of the fossil fuels and some of the things that we were doing into renewable energy and job creation. That's actually a really good point, and it's actually an element of the Green New Deal, without necessarily calling it the Green New Deal, that should have been out front. And this is not, I don't want to do Green New Deal, but I want to do this. I want to take this element of the Green New Deal and I want to mix it with this to make it this plan. And the same thing with healthcare. Everyone knows that the ACA was not the perfect system. So, okay, you don't want to get rid of the ACA, but you want to make sure that you have, different elements over what we've learned in the subsequent six or so years since it passed, of, what works, what doesn't, what can be done to help people out and to make sure that certain people who can't afford can get in, make sure people who, have the option to do something on their own and to take their own health insurance or whatever can do so, that there can be some incentives and some help for employers if they wish to provide health insurance, all those different things. And these are things that people have spoken about in passing, but they haven't made them features. More of that stuff can be done. Again, a lot of politicians are non-committal when it comes to these things. And I think one of the problems with Joe seeming like he's, left or right, left 1 minute, right the next, is that he's speaking as if we still have rules. That's the biggest problem I think is going on there. He speaks as if we still have rules, because the actual general rules of politics are that in order to govern this many people with this many diverse ideologies, you are going to float right sometimes, and you're going to float left sometimes, and you're going to have compromise deals that in order to get this thing over here, you have to give a little bit over there. But we are now conditioned to it's all or nothing, victory or defeat, step on the throat, to the victor goes the spoils, and all this other stuff. That is not governance. And that's one of the problems that's put us in the position that we're in right now, and it led us to this. Again, Trump is a symptom. He's not the disease by any stretch of the imagination. The disease is this system, and the rhetoric going so far and going just a little bit farther every time, more and more and more. Even if Trump is defeated in this particular election, how far does the next right wing have to go to take over from there? Then how much farther does the next left wing need to go to take over from there? This is unsustainable for a society. At some point, we're going to have to do stuff different. And if we don't figure that out, we're just not going to get there. And we need to have somebody that can talk to, and get people to understand that you have to come down a little bit from, the mountain. And if they don't speak specifically to every single ideology that you have on your table, then I can't vote for him. That's a decision that we all get to make that decision. But at the same time, there's kind of a consequence for that. The all or nothing approach gets us all or nothing, and it usually gets us nothing. One of the things that, from, going through the 80s and the 90s with Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush again, then Obama, is that none of them truly ever gave us everything that we needed or everything that we wanted, but it was enough to kind of make things either, not fall to total chaos or move forward to a degree, depending on who it was in charge and how the administrations went. But that toxicity of I must win, I must get my agenda across. No, now I must win, I must get my agenda across. And it's kind of built that kind of toxic radiation that's radiated out from Washington and has completely permeated society now. So now even normal, everyday average citizens have that same toxicity about their own politics, and their politics doesn't come with politics now, it comes with rhetoric. And that rhetoric is built on the echo chamber, which we get our news from, and for what we wanted to see out of this guy and didn't get, so screw that guy, I like this guy now, and things like that. We don't care about our neighbors. We don't compromise for our neighbors. And again, we are now becoming an even bigger barrel with more crabs in it. And then there ends up being a couple of more on the top that are going to ensure that this system stays this way. Because again, for every bit of chaos, someone profits. For every single bit of discord out there, someone profits. And those profiteers are able to pull these puppet strings and keep things going and keep the system going. I think that this is it's not, I don't think it's as much of a tale between two evils as 2016 was. I'm not going to lie and say that this is not a tale of, a pick between two evils, because it certainly is. But at the same time, we understand, we should know the lessons of 2016 and go, oh, well, what's the worst that can happen? Oh, I think we've seen that, or I think we've gotten a taste. Well, we can see more, certainly. But I think that even more so now than ever is comes the opportunity as we move forward and as we learn more and as we've seen more, to be able to put together more viable candidates, to be able to vet them more, to be able to use more of our voting power to kind of make sure that some of the excesses that we suffer under right now never happen again. Win, lose, or draw, what happened with the post office cannot happen anymore. Win, lose, or draw, race being leveraged against votes has to stop. One way or another, we need to be able to help those among us who can't help themselves because our population has grown so much. And, now more than ever, we need to be able to take care of, our people. We need to be able to take care of our health. We need to be able to take care of our children. I mean, health should have been a much bigger part in the minority community because we deal with more health issues. We have jobs that put us closer to harm's way. We have, physiological different issues that a lot of other communities do not have: obesity, diabetes, all these other different things that ail us. And, so these things need to be greater issues. And I think, more eyes open as we go along with this. And, if we can stand together a little bit more and hold whoever it is to real account, we'll have a better chance of being able to achieve those things. So, hopefully, we can see that there is some compromise that we have to have with one another to be able to get anything done. We still have to keep our eye on the prize overall of what we want out of these politicians and what we want out of these policies, and be able to hold their feet to the fire on that. But we're definitely not going to be able to do it if they're able to just consolidate power and not listen to anyone.
And one main thing, because I got one last question for you, because I know we held off this week with the debate being last night. We haven't spoke between us even about it yet. But I mean, about the whole Hunter Biden situation, I just wanted to see, how you felt on that, because personally, I think at this point, with Trump's going to continue to use that leverage. And I saw last night that, of course, like any parent, when he spoke on Hunter Biden, of course, that's not Joe Biden, but even having ties with the foreign government or things of that nature, the American people are going to be interested in that and want to know the truth. So I would say from Biden's camp, on my end, I feel like they should either have Hunter Biden himself come out, or either Joe Biden has to tell the American people, in the transparency sense of what's going on, with that issue there.
So I think there are three things that they should do. Number one, I believe that Hunter Biden should speak. And when he speaks, bring a calendar with him so that everybody can see when the whole thing happened with the investigations and everything that happened between the U.S. and Ukraine, and when he started working there, because there's a large gap between the two, and it shows that one had nothing to do with the other. Number two, I think they need to go ahead and embrace the fact that just like any other situation, he leveraged his father's name to get a good job that he wasn't qualified for. If we're excoriating people for that, it's going to get real empty on TV real quick, because there's a lot of people standing in positions that they are. Every single one of Trump's children has a job they are not qualified for. Trump's daughter's husband, Jared Kushner, has a job he is not qualified for. There are the sons and daughters of politicians littering every cable news channel and none of them have journalism degrees. None of them have the experience needed to have the jobs that they have, giving their opinion and shaping the way people think by constantly talking on air. So, be transparent about that. That's the second thing you can do. And then the third thing that you can do is pound home projection. All of these things have been about projection. We constantly bring up Hunter Biden because nobody wants to talk about Ivanka getting those patents and getting tariff exempt items from China when we were putting tariffs on things that were so bad that it drove farmers out of business and drove a few to commit suicide. No one wants to bring that up. That needs to be brought to the forefront. Whenever they bring up the corruption, we need to bring up why that dude got impeached. When they talk about, any of these things, it always comes down to projection. Hey, look at that over there. This is terrible. And people go, well, maybe it is terrible. And then they start debating on whether those things are, and we're not even paying attention to the fact that this is nothing but projection. Like, are you watching what is going on and all the way up to that point? I think, Biden himself could do a lot of good for his own campaign by calling these things out for what they are. Put it all out on Front Street. Put it out there. Did Hunter Biden leverage his family name to make money? You're damn right he did. Most people do. Most people who have a family name do that. He did that. Guilty as charged. Take your bow, walk off. But make sure that you connect all the dots for the American people, make it plain, make it open, show what's there, and more importantly, show what isn't there, and then hand it right back into their court. Because they did all this projection, they did all this talking. We're as open as a book. Where's your records? Where's your records? Because we're sitting there watching as as this supposed billionaire paid $750 in taxes. If that's a lie, you can easily dispel that lie anytime you want. And no one's holding him to account for this. Again, people are allowed to just say what they want. They're allowed to just put a lie out there, and then it's on you to prove the lie. It's on you to dispel the negative, while they just continue to espouse and just put out anything, because the goal, they don't need to be right and they don't need to be truthful. They just need to put it out there. Just by putting it out there, you and I are talking about it. Other people are talking about it, sitting around a dinner table. Other people are hinging their vote on it. And they don't have to answer to account for that. I think Biden can do something about that, and that he should.
Yes, sir. And I mean, with our closing statements today, if it's, anything, that you wanted to say in a closing statement as far as, going forward with the debates, what you're looking to see, how you're looking for a difference in what we saw from the first debate, and even tying in on our ancestry and that we talked about in the beginning, emphasizing the effect that will occur once we all actually know a little bit more of our genealogy and our ties and where we come from.
Absolutely. On the debate side, I mean, we know we're supposed to see 2 more of those, and I know the next one is supposed to be a town hall kind of thing. I don't think it'll go as crazy as the first one did, because it's one thing to shout at each other. It's another thing to have those questions posed to you by actual voters. I don't think anyone's going to be shouting too many of them down, and if they do, it's a bullet in their own campaign. So I think that, people have an opportunity to hear probably more substance. For whoever it is you're trying to hear substance from, I think you have a better opportunity to hear that substance in the subsequent debates that follow. As far as the genealogy is concerned, again, I would say, if you have an opportunity to do so, please do so. If you, consider getting you're getting someone a gift for the holidays, I would strongly suggest getting that. I mean, anything else that you were going to buy them, maybe a good present, but it won't be the present of, opening up things for them, opening up your identity, opening up culture, opening up family, opening up history for yourself. It instills a sense of pride and instills a sense of self-worth, of collective community worth, and a legitimate identity for yourself and for those around you that you love and have been around you from the beginning. So, anyone that gets a chance to do it, please do it, and again, as we get into this voting season, whoever it is that you vote for, whatever you identify with, make sure that you do what you have to do to make sure your voice is heard. Make sure that you vote in person if you can, as safely as you can. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and make sure that we pay attention out there, because there's a lot of elements trying to get us to look at the squirrel running around, or at the laser pointed at the wall, as opposed to the things that are being stolen right from underneath us.
Yes, sir. And well said. And again, I'm gonna speak on the voting. It is very important for everyone to vote who is eligible to vote this year, and make sure that your voice is heard. We posted a post on the page last week directed towards felons in certain states. I know that over the past few years since the last election, that certain laws have changed directed towards previous felons and people who have already paid their dues to society. And there's actually a lot more leeway, I believe, in Georgia. I would go back to the post actually and read it, because I'm not entirely 100% on the what it takes to do it. But as I said, for anyone who wants their voice heard, whatever hurdle it is, I'm pretty sure it may not be the worst in the world. So if it's that important to you to be a part of the process, I push, to actually get out there and do these things. On COVID safety, as I said, we're going into the winter season and the fall here, and with the weather changing, without still a vaccine being produced so far, it's going to be a lot more cases of COVID rising in certain areas. So, as I said, wear your mask and wear your gloves if you do go out in public and things of that nature, and take very good care of yourself in that aspect going forward. Thank you again, Mark, for this week. And moving forward, everyone, please, tune into the debates, whether antics or not, tune in and be able to pull something from it going forward, and be able to have a clear view of who you're voting for and what their ideology is on that end, things of that nature.
One last thing, everyone that gets a chance, please, if you get a chance to watch this on YouTube, you get a chance to hear it when it's posted on Facebook. If there's anything about this that strikes to you, if you have an opinion, please leave it. If you get a chance to watch the video later, make sure you give it, try to give it a like and a share. Let other people hear it if it's a message that appeals to you. If you have an opinion, if you have something to add, if you have other topics that are along these lines, or something totally different that you feel affects the community, and you want those things shared and you want it out there, please let us know. Please put it out there. Please put it in the comments. We can't do any of this stuff without you guys. So make sure that you jump in, participate, because we're here for each other.